So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today on a webinar panel where the subject for the afternoon is the new government support schemes for startups and scale-up and growth companies. Why is this necessary? Look, there have been so many government announcements and schemes over the last 6 weeks or so. It is increasingly important that everyone understands what is out there. What does the toolkit of solutions look like? And hopefully hear from people who are close to both the negotiations of those schemes and then the implementation to help you, a critical community for the UK economy, understand what help is available in these difficult and challenging times. Although we talk about a toolkit, let me just break that down briefly. We have what's called the CCFF, which is really a scheme for the largest corporates who are investment grade. There is the second scheme, which is called syllables, is perhaps how we refer to it, which is the large corporates loans up to about £50 million. There's the CBILS scheme. That's for smaller companies up to revenue of about £45 million. And that is, if you like, the toolkit as of last week. Last week, however, we've moved on. There are two very important new schemes. One is called the Future Fund. And then there's a huge extension of a series of grants and other forms of financial support through Innovate UK. And really today's panel is in particular to help you understand the most recent announcement, the Future Fund, and this very important extension of grants. And I have to say, we've got a wonderful panel who have very kindly joined us today, who have been deeply involved in the constructs and the thought processes here to help you through and understand those newer schemes. We will at the end take questions on any subject. But for today, the focus of the panel is those two more recent schemes. So with that, I'd like to hand over to our moderator for the rest of the session, Benjamin Storey, who heads up for Barclays Ventures, the business that I represent, all of our funding solutions and our business insight. So Benjamin, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Ben. Welcome to the panel event. So I'll just introduce our panel very briefly. We have Executive Chair of Innovate UK, Dr. Ian Campbell, CEO of the ScaleUp Institute, Irene Graham, CEO of Capital Enterprise, John Spindler, our Head of High Growth Entrepreneurs at Barclays, Juliet, Rogan, and of course yourself, Ben, CEO of Barclays Ventures. We have asked the panel today to join us to provide some tips and tricks on the recent government announcements. The topics we've discussed are overviews of options for you to think about when you or do your independent research and to make your business decisions, and are not intended as recommendations or advice. Remember that as well as your business has its own individual circumstances, the statements, the views expressed may not be applicable or suitable to your business. Okay, so before we start, I want to make everyone aware that you can raise questions throughout today's panel through the VVox app. So a link was sent at the registration period here. You can submit that, and we'll be asking those questions, the highest liked questions, towards the panel towards the end of the event. We're committing to try and spend as much time as we can answering questions through here, so please make sure you upload any questions you feel you have. We can also raise questions, or you can also engage with the subject using the Twitter hashtag FutureFund. So it's hashtag FutureFund to share your views and opinions, and we'll try to spend as much of our time over the days and weeks trying to get back and answer and engage with those queries. Okay, so why are we here today? On Monday, the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, announced the £1.25 billion package for high-growth businesses, many of which who were unable to access some of the other schemes, such as CBILS. The new wave of support is split into two offerings, with the Future Fund, which is an extension, and an extension of UK, Innovate UK funding as well. We'll therefore split the panel into two pieces, two sides. We'll focus initially on the Innovate UK side, as that's the largest pot of money which is now available. So, Ian, if I come to you first as the Executive Chair of Innovate UK, could you please overview what the £750 million fund compromises of, and how will you expect this capital to reach businesses listening on the call?
Surely. So for those of you that are not aware, Innovate UK is the government's innovation agency, and it's part of UK research and innovation. And our role really is to help businesses with good ideas and technologies to get along the journey of taking risk. And to that end, the £750 million that was announced is basically split into two elements. There is a £200 million element to help companies we help today in existing environments through grants. and then a further 550 million that's split across both grants and loans. Some of the loans are accessible to companies that already have loans with us, but overall that second pot is really there for companies large and small to take part in the scheme that want to continue to innovate during clearly this troubling time.
Thank you very much. Irene, I believe from your role in the ScaleUp Institute, you've also come across how some of these are really impacting, or how they should be able to impact on the businesses that you're working with. You were sharing some really useful views before we started this call. Would you like to share those now?
Yeah, no, thanks very much, and hello to everyone out there. It's really important when we look at the scaling up agenda for the UK that we recognise that we're great and have been great at startups. We've not been so great at growing them. So there is actually already a raft of policies trying to help both our startup and our growth community that have been established pre the crisis, Innovate UK being one of them, which has a whole suite of services available and support services through its Innovate to Succeed and European Enterprise Network services as well. And equally, when you look at the Future Fund, which will be managed out of the British Business Bank, we've also got a raft of services there that are starting to come through to support businesses growing, whether that's the Angel Co-Investment Fund, the Regional Angel Programme, and indeed what British Patent Capital is doing now. So it is important for this audience to know there are other schemes in existence already. The two that have now been launched are very complementary, and it's very important. We have a scale-up community that's very innovative, that's very international in its outlook as well. And the services that are going to be on offer in Innovate UK, building already on what they do, is going to be really important as we seek to innovate out, actually, of this crisis and really get our innovators accelerating projects, which I know many are now seeking to do with the knowledge that this funding will be available. So that's one part of it, and it's very critical. But I think the other aspect of it, not just the finance, Ian, and I think you can talk on this, Innovate brings support around that to these businesses. It has individuals on the ground working with these businesses day in, day out, and a suite of services that they can avail themselves of from the startup to the scale-up community side and business side. And I think that's really important not to lose in this, because it is a combination there that's very complementary. And the Future Fund complements what's already debt products in terms of some equity provision. But Ian, I mean, you want to talk a little bit more about some of the broader activities that you do.
Surely, Irene. So thanks for teeing that up, because one of the key elements we see in this package is actually to raise the level of our business advisory services. So working through the Enterprise Europe network and our other advisory network partners, we're trying to scale up our activity to support over 5,000 innovative, high-growth, both small and medium-sized businesses that have received Innovate funding, to allow them to, first of all, survive the next few months, then stabilise, and then hopefully as we go through this period, eventually grow when we come out of the COVID land that we're in just now. And we estimate that that's the first part of the support that we can offer. And essentially, though that's not financial, that can be very sound advice about how to adapt your business models in the current light. I think secondly, when we build on that, you then need to talk about the financial support we can wrap around that. And there are really two elements to that. The first one is for our existing customers, being able to help them with cash flow troubles through bringing forward the grant payments. So the £200 million of the 550 is for existing grant and loan holders who might need additional immediate support. We're going to put tools in place to allow them to draw forward on their grants and loans. Typically, we offer grants a quarter in arrears. We're going to bring that forward for that existing portfolio. But then also, we want to build and leverage in those businesses by having additional funding going in to support our portfolio. So £300 million is available in continuity grants and innovation loans, split roughly 50-50. And that's to help businesses that were on track pre-COVID to continue on track to grow and scale as we come out the other side. But we've got to balance that off as well by understanding that, in these troubling times, great ideas come to the fore and businesses want to survive and thrive. And therefore, new customers will have the ability to apply for up to about £211 million in grant sizes of up to £175,000, because that's the de minimis level. And the important thing there is we're not going to run our typical competitions of 12 weeks open and then 12 weeks to assess. We are going to try and turn around these competitions within a month. We already had a pilot at that Benjamin and I talked about last week. We had over 8,000 applications for our call that went out for £20 million. So the demand is there, but we've got to make the right choices and doing that quickly. The other thing I'd like to remind everybody, alongside this funding, we have business as usual services. We still have the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund. We still have our Innovation Partnership Model. We still have innovation loans. And those programs will run through the year. However, our immediate priority is to focus on Monday's announcement and deploy the grant funding as quickly and effectively as we can. So I hope that answers some of the questions you raised there, Irene.
Brilliant news.
And I think Ian, the fast tracking is really important. I think that's we know in the community that that's just an important aspect to get into the process as quickly as possible. So that's great.
I think if I had said 5 weeks ago that our organisation is going to work remotely and we're going to cut our processes down by 80% and still deliver within 4 weeks of launching the competition, I think I would have been frog marched out the building. This is the reality of the situation. I'm delighted with the way my organisation and others have responded to this, and I think it gives us a great opportunity to build on that going forward, to simplify our processes, to execute effectively, and still be a good custodian of public funding.
Thank you, Ian. Ian, you mentioned the new capital that's available. Just could you overview very quickly what type of businesses that you would generally look to accept or to put this capital through to? What sort of businesses would be appropriate?
Surely, Benjamin, I think there's a couple of key elements here. This is for ambitious businesses, large and small, and from all sectors. It's not thematically driven. We want to see innovation thrive across all the elements of the economy, and probably, in light of current circumstances, new business models for existing companies coming to the fore to allow them to maybe take advantage of these new ways of working that we have. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for businesses there. I think that there's two elements to the strands, though. First of all, we want to help businesses that are struggling today with real cash flow issues, hence the concentrating on the initial grant holders. But then there's that exploitation piece, and I think we have to balance them both off and be able to be receptive to new ideas and new concepts that maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago were just a flicker in somebody's mind that have suddenly turned into reality. So any business, any size, as long as they're resident in the UK, R&D active with great innovation potential, that's who we want to hear from.
Ian, can I just ask a quick question? Will you contact your grant holders directly, or should they contact you?
I think I have no doubts that grant holders will be contacting me. We've seen that already, John. So one of the first things that we offered was a 3-month no-cost extension to existing grant holders. That's already been put in place. Over the course of the coming days, rather than weeks, days, we will be contacting grant holders to make those initial introductions. The challenge is we have a portfolio of over 3,000 grants and over 5,000 customers that we have to contact. So if you haven't heard from us, please give us a little bit of patience. We will get to you, absolutely.
And maybe it's worth flagging on our COVID hub at the ScaleUp Institute, they can get access into the central connection point to your advisors. So those of you who are interested in the money that's available in the future for the grants and challenges you mentioned, Ian, I think you're hoping to at least work with around 1,000 businesses in that. You can also register through that into directly Ian's team and register interest there as well.
Yeah, Irene, to be specific, we're looking for in excess of 1,200 people to apply for the £175,000 grants. Of course, we hope to run them, I would say, over the next 2 or 3 weeks. So one thing I would advise everybody either watching or listening is that if you have a URL in front of you, it's innovateuk.gov.uk, and funding opportunities, which is up in the top right-hand corner. If you just check that every few days, we hope to have a number of these competitions up and running within the next 3 to 4 weeks.
Thank you very much. So, Irene, how important is this grant funding announcement to ensure that innovative businesses continue to grow and scale? And what are the risks that businesses in the scale-up economy are facing if this capital is not invested soon?
Well, I mean, I think our scale-up community are very innovative businesses and internationally oriented as well. So this grant funding allows them to look at projects that they want to accelerate and seek to get funding to do that. And we're seeing many of our scaling businesses wanting to do that and seeking to do that. So it's absolutely vital this grant funding has become available now. Now, the scale-up community goes across a breadth of companies. We've got, Ben mentioned at the beginning, some that are in the 45 million turnover level that couldn't access any scheme for the COVID crisis right at the get-go. But we've seen the larger loan scheme come through, which is great. It launched fully on Monday. And so that's enabling those businesses to also continue their growth trajectory as they move forward. The Future Fund aspect allows those that are pre-revenue and loss-making, alongside Innovate UK's grant funding, to really enable their continuation of their business and the ability to grow further and move forward on the projects they're already undertaking. So the combination of having Innovate UK, the grants, that acceleration into new projects, the combination of what already exists in the country, and then the coupled with the Future Fund as we move into that discussion will be helpful. But we need to build on that. So, as with any businesses, they're grappling with what happens now with my staff, the projects, the customer base that I was working with, and how do I continue my trajectory of growth through this crisis? Because we do need to come out the other side, and it's our scale-up economy that's going to bring us to that conclusion. And that's why Innovate UK's package of services and the grants are vital for accelerating that innovation.
Benjamin, maybe if I could just say one quick thing. Companies out there that are looking to pivot now, that might be in higher turnover, can still apply into an Innovate UK grant if they have a different business model or are trying to attract a different market, and therefore they need to fund some high-risk innovation that otherwise they might not be able to undertake. That would absolutely be in the sweet spot for some of the funding that's been announced.
Thank you very much, Ian and Irene. It's a good chance to segue to the Future Fund. However, before we do that, I've been made aware that we're having some challenges in hearing, and there's some crackle on the line with our audio. So I can only apologise to all of our listeners, and I can promise you that the team are working to try and correct this as we speak. So we'll progress speaking about the Future Fund. So, John Spindler, I'd like to bring in the conversation here if I can. I believe you played a key role in supporting some of the government thinking around the Future Fund. Could you just provide an overview of the fund, and if you've got a few more, brief details about what it is and how it should work?
Yeah, ourselves and people like Brett Hoberman from First Minute, Dan Kolsky from Public IO, and a host of other VCs, and very much basically the Save Your Startup basic community that was set up by ourselves and Crowdcube and a few other organisations. I've been campaigning for some time, for about 5 weeks, but there's this particular gap where startups who have raised a small amount of money basically, and will be finding it very difficult going forward with that basically business model, that research-intensive business which they've been developing, for that to get funded through this crisis. We are estimating seed stage investments and roughly £1 million will drop by 70 to 80% in the next basically 12 months, which will have a big impact on the abilities of people to be able to raise. So we've been campaigning for basically some form of simple, easy to apply, quick to deploy fund, which could leverage basic private sector investment to go into companies that already have raised a small amount of money, to give them time, give them runway, so they can basically get through this COVID crisis, return to some kind of growth path, and potentially help to raise future money in 2021 or beyond. So that was the purpose of the scheme. It got announced on Monday. Some of the things have been publicised in terms of including the convertible note. I want to say at the moment, until next Monday, quite a few things are still movable. We are still in a sense of direction. We're still trying to see how we can take the scheme and make it as open and accessible to as many basic startups that qualify as possible. So you would have seen a lot of activity on Twitter and social media, and you would have seen a lot of commentary made by others about how this will work. I can give you some insights, but fundamentally, until this is a sense of direction, until next week, at least Monday, possibly later, kind of how it actually will work, who can actually apply, what type of match funding can be used as qualifying match funding. All of those are being clarified as we speak.
Okay, thank you very much. And Juliet, if I could just bring you into the conversation, was there a need for an additional separate fund outside of the £330 billion package already offered by the government?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously the £330 billion fund goes across a number of different schemes that are really, impressive in terms of what the government has managed to pull together. I think the difference with high growth and early stage companies that John alluded to is that they have a different kind of profile to other businesses, to the extent that they can be loss making, and the schemes that, particularly the loan schemes that have been announced and are being deployed currently, tend to look at affordability as one of the key criteria. And they're also based on state aid rules, which tend to have a clause in there which defines an undertaking in difficulty as being one that has incurred losses of greater than 50% of share capital. So that itself makes a lot of VC-backed or equity-backed businesses ineligible for those schemes. So I think it's really important that they have announced this package. But again, to John's point, this is a signalling tool as well to say that they're looking at it, and whilst some of the detail of the future fund isn't quite available or hasn't yet been defined, I think it's really important for the high community to know that the government and Treasury and British Business Bank and all the industry experts that are feeding into it are really looking at making it fit for purpose and work well.
Thank you. So you mentioned criteria there. Do you know, and John, maybe a question open to yourself as well, do you know what the criteria businesses who may be looking to access this fund need to hit? Are there any details around eligibility at the moment?
The basic eligibility is for companies that already have raised money. At the moment, that threshold is £250,000, which you've raised in the previous 5 years. And the second big criteria is that you would need to provide private sector match. The kind of private sector match at the moment has to be invested on the same terms as the government, and I know that may be restricted to some forms of angels, VCs, VCTs, EIS funds, accelerator funds, government funds, etc. And that's where a lot of the details is being hammered at the moment to try and make it more amenable. But obviously, you're also going to have to demonstrate that you can need the money and that the money will be useful. It would allow you to basically kind of get through this COVID and return to some form of basic development or growth path.
Fantastic. Juliet, do you have anything to add to that? Or?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. Obviously it's been structured as a CLN, so a convertible loan note. But the way, from the headline terms at least, it does look very much like an equity instrument, with the structure of which means that the likelihood is that they will convert. And I guess it's just a question of how you can get the match funding alongside it to work.
Just to clarify why a convertible note is, a convertible note puts the tricky issues of things like valuation into the forward at the time when the next round is then basically negotiated. Very hard at the moment to make those decisions about what would a startup be worth, what is its present basic kind of market opportunities, its present risk assessment in a pandemic, especially in a lockdown. So it's to take all those decisions and put them into the future, 1-2 years in the future.
Yeah.
The government can convert at a discount on the next round. So whoever puts the next round in is paying 20% more money for that shares in that company than the government will. And obviously, there's also an element of that money to be repaid to the government at a premium and at interest. If basically the startup and the investor basically has the means to do so and wants to do so.
Thank you, John.
The other thing I'd say just on that is the importance of the match funding piece means that that private investor is going to be doing the due diligence on the company. And I think that's why they've structured it like that, which makes a lot of sense, because the government wouldn't be in a position to be able to make those decisions.
Yeah, that was very much a quality threshold. So you can see that the government's getting into some of the best deals, not just people who may, unfortunately, have been failing anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you. So John, is there any known process of how this will work at the moment? Have you got any idea of what businesses will need to do in order to get access or become, to start this process of accessing the finance?
The thing that I do know is that they want to be able to basically start taking applications in the first week of May. And that the responsibility of designing that system, that application system, is with the British Business Bank as we speak. So kind of knowing those two criteria, hopefully that you'll be able to kind of find out more in basically the middle of next week, and it will be a fairly simple application process, and the accompanying documentation that you'll have to basically send with your application is basically easy or relatively easy for startups who have obviously raised before to basically to provide.
Thank you. So Irene, if I could bring you back in, again, from your position in the ScaleUp Institute, principally what does this mean for the high growth businesses that you're dealing with on a regular basis who are looking to obtain some of this funding? Is this a positive? Is this positive for them, or is this more challenging, bringing more challenges for them?
No, I think it's very positive. I mean, I think what we need to recognise here is what John and Juliet have said. Firstly, any business that's scaling up that's pre-revenue or loss-making could not actually access the debt schemes. Equity is more applicable, and this is one of the schemes now in existence at a large scale that can seek to address that gap. The second piece is, I think I just want to really pick up the point John made and Juliet again. This is about backing businesses and looking at businesses that are already growing and have investment. So if you're just starting out or even thinking of starting out and have no investment, you're better to be looking at the startup loan scheme or looking at existing angel investors. And there are some new, just even today, and the new Startup Club angel program was announced by the British Business Bank today. And if anyone's interested in that, we can give you the details to pass around. So it's really important to look at this as the businesses who are on that scale-up journey, who have high potential to grow even further, who are continuing to operate at the moment and grow through this, and that includes our R&D businesses in life sciences, etc. This is not just about tech. This is across sector and regions, and have that already initial investment that's gone into them, and further match funding that will come with it. So it is important. It is those businesses in that environment. There are other schemes, startup loans, some of the angel programs that have just recently been announced, one in the North, Par Equity, one just recently today, the Startup Club, that are also being accelerated to try and bring further money into that very, very early stage as well.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I've got an open question for all of you, really. There will be lots of businesses who find access to this future fund quite difficult or totally inaccessible entirely. What do you say to businesses who feel this support is not suitable for them? Should look to help their business at this time? Open question to all of you.
So I think, Ben, it goes back to there is this is additional support to what already is in place. So in local areas, you have a range of Eagle Labs, I know that you have, but also growth hubs. The growth hubs locally are environments that can get businesses access to the raft of government services that are available, often working with the private sector. Again, on our COVID hub, there's access there to all of those at a local level, and there's relationship managers working across that spectrum. These schemes are now in place, are also designed to help close the funding gap and challenges, but it doesn't take away what's already in place. So if you're involved in the creative sector, Creative England and the Creative Industry Federation has services. If you're involved in the tech sector, Tech UK, Tech Nation, and Life Sciences, the Bioindustry Association, all of the communities in different sectors are coming together, and you've also got your local accountants and advisors that are seeking to step up their engagement too. And Ian mentioned the relationship managers that they've got on the ground around the country. So one shouldn't just think this is the only available schemes. There are others, and there are access points to those as well.
Benjamin, if I could just add one thing, totally agree with what Irene said. I think the key here is we're trying to put together all of the networks that we all represent. We all have, I think, websites that are tied to each other. We are sharing content. I think we're all trying to provide those step-by-step guides, reflecting really the panel here, and so whether it's Eagle Lab's website or indeed those that are run by Innovate UK or obviously the ScaleUp Institute or indeed Capital Enterprise, We'll put it together. And if you do have questions, please do reach out to all of our teams. We're all staffed up and helping wherever we can. And of course, we obviously do have, I think, still 70% of our own branch network open. If you can't get through for whatever reason on the calls, just let us know and we'll try and follow up for you.
I suppose I want to say about the Future Fund is yes, it's going to be highly competitive. Yes, it's probably not enough money, and we hope to get more. Yes, private sector investment is finding it particularly difficult to risk their own money at this time in the most high-risk category of investment there is, which is an early-stage tech startup. And therefore, there will be startups who will have to basically kind of rely not on outside investment in this time. It is going to be hard. It's not going to be a kind of cakewalk, and there will be other tactics and techniques that you can maybe have to apply. So yes, I suspect there'll be a lot of people that will find that their own business or their own startup just can't go through some of these hoops. If you can't, and you're in that position, I'm happy to take and see what we can do at Campbell Enterprise. I'm sure Barclays Eagle Labs are going to say the same. To try and help you navigate that, and if you can't, to help you put together business models which are less reliant on outside investment. I think the news from Innovate UK today is probably fantastic because I predominantly invest in deep tech startups. My investment firms are in that area. And I think about 70-80% of them actually get grant money from Innovate UK or loan money from Innovate UK. So I think for deep tech startups, this is a fantastic week.
So, Benjamin, just let me build on that slightly. If your company is less than 3 years old and you haven't had government support previously, then you could definitely apply into the schemes that we announced today for new businesses coming into Innovate. And the whole idea there is not only do you qualify because you're under 3 years of age, so you don't worry about state aid, we're also making these grants either the first £50,000. If it's a £50,000 grant, we will pay the £50,000 up front. Or if it's a bigger grant, we will pay half of it up front under the de minimis rules. So if you have a great idea, we're not asking you to match fund, and we're giving you an incentive in terms of getting started quickly. The other thing we would like to see from that, of course, is that businesses take that funding, react quickly, and develop new products and services and get to market quicker as a result of that. So that's the trade-off between the two. But certainly from our side, we're trying to eliminate all the hurdles in terms of match funding, at least for the first half of this competition.
And that's what I think is so great, Ian, and the importance there as well is across sectors and regions as well, which is really important. I mean, anyone that's not a tech business on this call should recognise it is for a broader range of sectors. And indeed, the Future Fund is also broader than just tech. So across regions and across sectors is an important aspect of this.
The only thing I'd add is just on the Future Fund is not to automatically disqualify yourself from it, because I think, from what we've heard from Irene and John, the terms of that are, evolving as we speak. So, whilst some information has been released about it, keep checking back. And certainly we, as an organisation, will try and make sure you're aware of things as they change, and maybe we'll hold another content-driven webinar like this in order to be able to explore those.
Thank you. So I think we'll close on the Future Fund for now, and we'll move into question and answers or questions that have been raised through VVox. While my team just assimilates some of those questions, I think it's a good point to raise at the time that Eagle Labs or Barclays Eagle Labs are currently running a program with Capital Enterprise, which is helping businesses to understand how to write quality grant applications. So this may be useful for applying for the Innovate UK funds that are available at the moment. They're also running a program on how to run a crowdfunding campaign as well. Any business that wishes to participate in this free-to-access program can register so on the labs.uk Barclays website. So that's the Eagle Labs website. This is just one program of many run by Eagle Labs, as well as rich content, which is there to support businesses through such a troubling time. So while you're on the website, you may also wish to see what other events we've got running, and there's actually going to be a follow-up event to this event today on the same subject. Once we get more detail, run next Thursday at the same time, 2 till 3 p.m. And all the questions that we can get from Twitter and through VVox, we'll look to try and answer through the week or through next week's session, again 2 till 3 on Thursday. Okay, so I've got a couple of questions which have been sent to me via email before I look at the VVOX one. So Ben and Juliet, a question for you guys. What other support, both financially and non-financially, is Barclays offering businesses through this tough time?
Perhaps if I kick off and then hand over to Juliet. Look, it's tempting to talk about all of the various funds and the great government initiatives. We wanted to take very early, as Barclays, some just sensible early steps as well. So I think for me, the ones that I would at least call out is, first of all, for companies with turnover up to £250,000, we're effectively giving everyone free everyday banking until the 12th of June, just to make life easy. Let's try and reduce so much as we can any of those day-to-day charges. So free banking for our business bank customers, certainly until the 12th of June. The second, again, has been, I think, well received, but if you're not aware of this, then please do reach out to us. Where we have loans of over £25,000 with business bank customers, we've offered up 12-month capital repayment holidays. And again, just very simple, hopefully common sense stuff. What can we do to lift some of that immediate cash flow burden on this sort of super important community in the UK? I think I've mentioned already that we've tried also to keep just as many branches open as possible. I know it's challenging in the environment and people have to make their own decisions as to whether or not they are able and willing to travel. I'm just so proud of our customers who are able to do that, and our own frontline staff who are there for you if you would like to try and use those branches. And there's web information available as to what's open there. Those are the big ones. There's a whole lot on the personal banking side, and obviously at the smaller end, we appreciate that personal banking and business banking are very closely interrelated. And so we've waived obviously all interest on overdrafts from the 27th of March through again until the end of April. And then we've doubled down on the buffers in and around those overdrafts until the 9th of July. So there's extra capacity in those overdrafts as well that we've offered out there. We've also given a lot of customers, 79,000, I think it is, mortgage customers, relief on payment holidays relating to those mortgages, and also no late charges or cash advance fees in relation to our Barclays card business. So there's a whole, again, just very simple principle. What can we do to help cash flow for everyone in the community so far as we can in these sort of very difficult early weeks and months of the COVID crisis? Juliet, anything that I've missed that I should have called out?
I think you've covered everything, really. I would just say the £100 million COVID community package, COVID aid package would be another thing. And then just from a high growth perspective, I guess, we've been working really closely with the Cambridge Judge Business School in order to be able to provide our ScaleUp program this year online as a virtual program. It started yesterday for cohorts in Cambridge, Manchester and London, and we'll be looking to open that up later on in the year for the next year's cohort. Other things to just touch on is the array and range and depth of content that's on the Eagle Labs virtual network, which you can find. Where you found the details of this webinar. There's pretty much daily seminars and courses that you can sign up to through Capital Enterprise in order to be able to get your business into firstly knowing what's going on in terms of the government support, but also trying to support your teams, etc. as well.
Thank you. I'll just make an announcement to everybody who's online who's still having some sound problems. That there's a new link been shared through VVOX. If you access through VVOX, the new link has zero sound issues, I've been told. So if you're still having issues with sound, please do change the feed to the VVOX new link. Thank you. Okay, the next question I've got that's come through is for Irene. What of the government support offered to date will be the most accessed and utilised by scale-ups? So I think that's probably speaking much broader.
Well, I think every aspect of the government support package is being utilised. From the furloughing scheme that launched on Monday, 140,000 companies there. Some of those are definitely scale up. So every scheme is being utilised, and this is why I think it's really important to recognise that there is no one solution in a crisis like this. It has to be a whole suite of them. Ian touched on earlier, over 8,000 applications to just the COVID challenge that was launched a couple of weeks ago through Innovate UK. So the ScaleUps are using that. They're using the larger loan scheme. They'll be using the traditional loan scheme, those that are in profit and revenue making, and they will also be using this new equity scheme, the Future Fund. But also they're using schemes that exist today, whether it's in local areas where they've got ScaleUp programs operating, or whether it's in the private sector in terms of what Barclays are operating, the stock exchange and the elite program. So there is a lot of support available that is still continuing, and we have those listed. But also, I think just the whole combination of services is hitting the spot where our scaling businesses are really active. They're growing their employment, they're growing their opportunities, and they're growing their innovation. So what we've got today and the suite of them will all be used. And I think you've heard some really good ways in which to get access to them.
Thank you very much. My next question is for Ian. Can recipients of the UK government grants from other organisations, such as BEIS, also be included in the Innovate UK grant recipients group? I think that refers to the 200 million potentially.
Yes. So again, an answer a bit like John's earlier. We're still finalising all the rules around that. However, at this stage, I think the fortunate thing is not only is there the ability to apply through that scheme, but also much wider with the new announcement around the 300 million that is accessible for 1,200 companies as well. So if you don't qualify for one, you'll certainly qualify for the other.
Thank you. I've got a question for John. I'll read it verbatim. I understand the Future Fund convertible loan has to be provided through the British Business Bank. Can the same or other British Business Bank partners also provide the equity finance through a fund also supported by the UK government, such as the Northern Powerhouse Investment Fund?
As I speak today, we don't know. That would be the honest answer. We expect, hopefully, that it will be. But as some of the people around here will talk about, the tricky issue of state aid has risen its kind of ugly head, and to limit who can get what. This is one of the issues that's being basically assessed at the moment, is that whether basically funds like the Northern Powerhouse, you can use that as match against this new Future Fund loan. Basically, keep your ears open, basically, and go back to your Northern Powerhouse fund and tell them that you want it, so it can be lined up if it is going to be, and you should find out next week.
Okay, thank you. Ian, I'm coming back to you for the next one. Is there a limited number of grant applications one business or one startup project can currently make, i.e. existing funds applied they applied by the sounds of it for the £20 million fund from a couple of weeks ago, and they'd be interested in applying for future ones?
So that shouldn't in itself restrict you. What we do like to see are fresh applications. So if an application has been put forward twice and not been funded, it would have to be fundamentally changed to be considered a third time. That being said, you can hold multiple grants addressing different aspects or different elements of innovation at any one time, and we don't put a limit on that.
Okay. Next question. I think this is open for everybody. There's lots of positives from the support offered, but what are you concerned with from business perspective? So it's not really not directed to anybody. So if I go to Ben first, so the question is, lots of positives from the support offered, but what are you concerned with for businesses?
Look, I think John has touched on one of these points. Look, all of these schemes, I think, are being rolled out at real pace, and I think it is great to see the urgency and the focus that this is getting from government. As with all of these things, they're done at pace, and rightly so, but they will need some tweaks, some iterations. They need the feedback, frankly, from all of those who have joined us today, and obviously others on the panel. And so my concern is just to make sure that all of the very good feedback comments we're getting together are fed back quickly into the government bodies. They are listening, for sure, and that we do end up settling the rules very quickly, because that will then allow, obviously, all of the people listening today and sort of the equivalents outside of this call to know where they stand and get the applications in. And it'll allow people like Ian's team to then fire up and as he mentioned, get these processes working super quick. I think the one thing that I'm sure, like all you, pretty passionate about, we've got to get this money out and into people's accounts Time is absolutely of the essence. So my main concern is that we don't spend too long iterating. We need a bit of certainty, which is going to come, and then we march on. But in particular with the scheme, that's already up and running. We've got a team already in place. They've already made a huge contribution. It's now just a doubling down of capability. So that would be my first big area. I think the second one is probably just to say, look, the Future Fund is probably right now more tailored towards in sort of venture capital language, sort of Series A through to maybe Series C, that slightly more mature growth company. And that's great. It's a super important part of the economy. Insofar as there's thinking out there as to whether or not that should be stretched, for my mind, that we've got to decide, are there other schemes? Is it a doubling down within even further? I mean, we'll have some views on that, but it's just tweaking that to make sure we fit it in the right place. Those would be my two observations.
Maybe picking up on that, Ben, I'd say the following. I mean, I think I started and said, we went into this crisis very good at starting up businesses, not so good at growing them. And that's a problem we've had well before the crisis. It's a problem we've had well before Brexit. So we need to continue to invest and create the infrastructure for the future. I do think this fund could be part of that, but we've also got to continue to invest in the infrastructure that Innovate UK has. It's one of the most important agencies we have in this country, and it's one that is really building for the future, and it's also helping our startup, scale up, and growth economy. And Ian said that several times across. It is a body that connects universities, corporates, scale-ups, SMEs and startups together, and I think that is very unique for us, and it's something we have to build, because what we're going to have to do building out of this is invest in the right infrastructure for the future, and I think that's very important, as will be how we build on what are a range of programmes the British Business Bank has, and further also accelerate those. So one of the things that has long been a problem in the UK is patient capital and growth capital. So some of the measures happening now will help foster that further, but we have to continue to deliver towards the patient capital and growth capital, unlocking pension funds for the future as well. And I think what this crisis does is accelerate the focus on making that happen for the long term, and that's the opportunity that we have as well.
Benjamin, can I just one extra thought to Irene? Yes. I think as we get into the implementation, and I know this view is shared by the panel, it's going to be very important that the funding is spread right across the country. It has to be delivered to the benefit of everyone, and all of our networks respectively will do all we can to help that. And also those who, on the numbers and the stats, have not fared as well historically. And I'll call out one, female founders, as being one example. There are many others. And again, trying to use this as an opportunity to address diversity and a full regional impact would be perhaps two extra thoughts to play in.
I completely agree with that, Ben, and you know that we feel strongly about that.
So again, capturing that, so Ben, you might not be aware, but we actually run a Women in Innovation programme, and our lead applicants from females has risen from a measly 12% up to a still disappointing but vastly improved 24%. We would like to get that up into the mid-30s in the short term. It's a passion of mine. But also going back to your question, at some point in time we need to get back to what the new normal is. And I think what we've got to have is a confidence amongst all the tech and innovative companies that we are going to get through this. So my biggest concern is that there's not enough confidence out there, and I'm hoping announcements such as the one on Monday provide that stimulus to look beyond the immediate term into the future. And we've really got to carry that vision to drive the knowledge-based economy, to get back to talking about 2.4% of GDP being spent in R&D, and really picking up the levelling up argument that you talked about earlier, Ben, and making sure that we distribute across the entire UK. So I think all of those are vital going forward.
Thank you, Ian. Lots of questions coming in, so please keep sending them. I've got dozens in my inbox, so if I move through very quickly. John, quick question. Is there an issue with the match funding if no one who is EIS or SEIS registered is going to invest?
Match funding is a problem. There are basically, when we started this process, and we got 55 funds behind us that collectively invested in the last 2 years in 2,500 companies. We were looked at the entire thing that's going to happen to the market, and the biggest fall is going to be at seed level. It's not going to be at A. It's going to be a big fall there. It's not going to be at B. And actually beyond that, the thing that basically Irene was saying, there is little evidence beyond C there'll be any fall. So those big scale-ups probably are okay if they can access, if they're profitable, and definitely they can access the big capital that is still available. Index announced only 2 weeks ago they just raised £2 billion to fund basically Irene's constituents. So the thing that is in the detail is at the moment, yes, the way that it's being structured, and I don't think it was by intention, is that basically it's going to make it very difficult for people at sea to raise the private capital. So our group and others are at the moment speaking to the BBB and Treasury to see if basically we can make either the notes basically more amenable to EIS, or to get HMRC to agree in this case. But basically the note itself, basically you can invest on a basic EIS basis, and to look at the other things around state aid rule, because it would be a slight tragedy, at least for us, but we set out to kind of deal with the next startups. Only ones we can fund, they still need funding, are A and B stage businesses. I don't know if I've just gone off on Frozen.
Can I just build on that point there? Because I think I just want to be clear about the scale-up community. The scale-up community represents companies that are growing at 20% in revenue or in employment, which means you can be pre-revenue. And that goes across our SME community. We have around 30,000 of them in the UK who are SMEs contributing 1.3 trillion. So actually, John, it's not just the I talked about some that are over 45 million, but there are many, many more in that very early stage scaling process. So there is a lot of us, including ourselves, right at the beginning when we knew the debt scheme that was coming out, that raised with Treasury, British Business Bank, Innovate UK, where the gaps were going to emerge, and have been working very closely alongside you, John, on what needs to be addressed. So the ScaleUp Institute has been very much in those conversations as well, and it has been noted how the British Business Bank and Innovate UK are listening to that. So one of the things that, as you're saying, John, is around terms at the minute, is how do we make sure the angel investors who are co-investors can actually access, if they've invested in businesses, how they can also make use of the fund and the future fund. It's way down in the technicalities of this, but it is something we're all working towards. And it is also about that cross-sector and cross-regional aspect as well. So some other things that we're looking at is how the VCT community, many VCTs are backing the scaling up community as well, and how you can flex some of their rules so that the most and broadest investor pools are accessible. But just to say, John, we're in that early stage growing aspect as well, and have been working on this from the get-go. It's a suite of services. It's a suite of services that we need. It's a grant.
Okay. Well, it's wrong to say we're divided, because obviously our start to become the growth. Exactly. And actually, I think it's an unintended consequence that, as Ben said, it's more looking like that it can basically more.
That continues right through, and I think we're both very focused on that.
If we can just move on, because we've got lots and lots of questions. So Ian, I've got lots aimed at you. If maybe do a quick fire with you. Trying to understand the makeup of the 750 million. You said 200 million is already allocated, but just being brought forward. 211 is for new, i.e. less than 3 years, and up to 175,000 each. What is the 340 million difference?
So it's split between new loans and new grants.
Okay. Will our UK revisit proposals already written, submitted and assessed as good but just failed to receive funding in recent smart grants and loans?
Something that we are discussing and debating whether that would be a benefit or not. Clearly, one of the challenges we have is many of the businesses that we fund also maybe don't have access to their facilities at the moment, and therefore trying to get money out the door and getting grants started if they're unable to access the facilities would be not helpful. So therefore we are in discussions around that.
Okay. Last one to you, Ian. I have understood that state aid limits are due to EU regulations, and the EU has said that these are being set aside during COVID-19. So should there be no reason for UK government to be limited by these? Couldn't you support?
So some state aid rules have been relaxed, not them all. And the ones that have been relaxed are relaxed as of the 31st of December and only apply directly to COVID affecting your business in the subsequent period. Undertakings in difficulty, for example, is still a test that we have to comply with. Using de minimis funding is one way in which state aid regulation is overcome. So we are trying to be creative, but we have to be compliant.
It's a whole minefield, believe me.
Okay, I'm conscious we're coming towards the end, so I'll just see if I can have one more question. This will be the last question, and then we'll try and pick up the rest of these in next week's session at the same time, 2 till 3 on Thursday next week. Okay, for the future fund, so open to John, Irene, does the match investment by an investor also need to be in the form of a convertible loan note, or can alternative investment vehicles be used to match the investment? For example, equity investment, ASA, which would then need to be SCIS, IES eligible.
As it stands, it has to be on the same terms as the government, but that is, again, what's being clarified.
Okay. We have got dozens and dozens and dozens of questions to go through in the next week. Ben, as we're coming up to time, I'm going to pass back to you to closing comments while we take note of all of the questions we've learned from today.
Okay, look, firstly, for all of those who've been listening, thank you so much for joining us. We take all of those questions very seriously. So what we will do is collate all of those questions, and we will work through the answers, and we will work out with our partners on the panel here how to share those and post them on our respective websites. But it's super valuable, because we get your feedback direct, and genuinely the panel that you have here have been very, very much involved in those discussions, and we will use that feedback, I'm sure, to help inform the next iteration of the discussion. So thank you for that. Yeah. Secondly, there has been apparently a little bit of a crackle on the line. Many apologies for that. We will be posting the video of this whole session without crackle, I hasten to add, next week on our support hub. And again, we'll look with our partners to see if we can share that through their own websites and channels as well. And then perhaps on that note, just to thank the panelists. They are incredibly involved in all these discussions. We're very fortunate to have them. So Ian, Irene, Juliet, John, Benjamin for moderating. Thank you so much. And finally, back to you or the audience. Difficult times, but we are here to help. We want to help. And if we can in any way, we will come back to you with those answers to the questions. So thank you so much for joining us today.